read the question out loud.
Okay. So as Laura just reminded me, I just turned the recording on for the meeting. I'm Beth Giannini, the Transportation Program Manager at the Franklin Regional Council of Governments. And this is the second part in our series on the Transportation Improvement Program. Our first workshop, we gave more of an overview of how the TIP fits into our regional transportation planning process. And in this session, we're going to delve deeper into how to take a project forward through the TIP process and kind of what the considerations are and how that moves forward. And we're going to have a presentation by Daryl Amaral at MassDOT District 2 is going to kick it off. And I did launch a question, which was, have you ever used MapIt before? And let's see, we're pretty split here. 42% of the participants say yes, that's 5 of 12, and 58% say no, 7 of 12. So that's great to know. And we will, let's see, I'm going to share the results. Here we go. And so this is great to get all this information. Let's stop sharing, and I'm going to turn it over to Daryl.
Okay. Okay, so with that, can everyone see the screen?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, yes.
So welcome everyone. I'm Daryl Amaral, the District 2 planner for MassDOT, along with Benjamin Breger. He's the Assistant District 2 planner for us here. Also with us today is Laura Hansen, the District 2 projects engineer for MassDOT, who will be assisting us with the slides we're going to present.
Hi. Happy Valentine's Day.
So moving on, we have on our agenda today, we'll be discussing the standard processes from project initiation through the 25% design submission. And we will touch on all of these to clearly identify your project's need and scope through our MapIt tool and MassDOT's project review committee. With that, I will turn this over to Ben for the next bit of information.
Great, thank you, Daryl. Hello, everyone. Ben Breger here with MassDOT District 2. I'm going to start off the presentation by discussing this is an overview of the project initiation process. The first part is the first two parts, I guess, are project request and project proposal. This constitutes essentially the MapIt process, which some of you are familiar with and which Laura will go into further detail after this. But just to give you an overview of kind of everything from MapIt to 25% or pre-25% design, it really starts with a project initiation form entered through MapIt, and MapIt stands for Massachusetts Project Intake Tool. So you'll submit a project intake form, which includes the essential information about the project, the location, the purpose, the need, about the existing facility that you're looking to improve or enhance or alter in some way. This information is then reviewed by district. In the case of Franklin County, it'd be either District 1 or District 2, depending on your town. And then, at that point, the project can either be advanced to the next step, or in consultation with the district, there will just be more information required or more refinement to clarify what the purpose of the project is. But once it moves along, the next step is a further fleshed out project proposal. And that's where you really get into the kind of nuts and bolts of the project, a rough cost estimate, more details on the project, a fully fleshed out or somewhat fleshed out scope at that point. And then once those two processes are complete, essentially a project is created at that point. And then project creation and pre-25% design scoping. That's a little bit what we talked about at the meeting last week. That kind of gets you into the TIP process. And the PRC is Project Review Committee. That's a MassDOT committee, which will review the project, assign it a project manager, and kind of initiate the process. So that's an overview of how we get from, kind of 0 to 60, if you will, really like starting from scratch and beginning a project. So next slide here. Yep. Focusing in on kind of the project initiation process. A lot of this is outlined in the MassDOT Project Development and Design Guide, specifically Chapter 2. So when you're obviously, to initiate a project, there needs to be a problem or an issue that you're trying to address, a transportation problem. And so obviously identifying that issue is the first step and better understanding what the need is and what opportunities there are. So identifying the project, and that can come from any number of places. Obviously, as municipalities, you have a great understanding of kind of what needs there are in your town. But that can also come from regional planning documents through that FERCOG has completed, identifying transportation problems on a regional level. It can also be just known safety issues, congestion problems, pavement conditions, or potentially the need for adding multimodal bike and ped accommodations to a corridor. So identifying the project's an important first step, obviously, and then planning the project. I think I'll speak to this a little bit. In my previous job, I worked for a town in Hampshire County and got involved in some planning, transportation planning projects. So obviously coordinating amongst your local departments, town administrator, town manager, or mayor, planning department, DPW, kind of getting everyone on board and understanding what resources there are, who's looked at this problem at all, and kind of getting together and understanding what opportunities there are to address an issue. Certainly talking with local stakeholders, people who abut or live close by, to get support for a project. And then one thing I'll mention too is it's kind of one avenue to kind of identify a problem and a potential solution. There are kind of this idea of like tactical urbanism, or like piloting a project. If it's something simple like proposing to add a bike lane, or when I worked for the town of Amherst, we piloted the idea of removing a right turn lane from downtown. And instead of just kind of going for it all in one go, we just use cones at first to kind of see what that could look like and kind of understand how the public might react and how it could work. And so it's a way of kind of visioning a project before you go for it in full and make it a permanent change. So that's one idea as well, in terms of planning. And then that's kind of step 3 is when you launch into project initiation and go into the map it process, as I discussed earlier. And yeah, I would just encourage you to be in touch with folks at FERCOG throughout that process when you're initiating a project, to understand the TIP process as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Laura Hansen, who's with MassDOT District 2, to discuss the map it project process in further detail. Thanks.
Thank you, Ben. I hope everybody can hear me okay. So my name is Laura Hansen, and I'm the District 2 Projects Engineer in Northampton. And I'm going to do a few slides here where I talk about the Massachusetts Project Intake Tool. The acronym is MAPIT. And this is for streamlining project initiation. And one thing I just wanted to mention is this whole presentation, and there'll be another handout available to you, I believe, through FERCOG, through their website. There'll be a lot of links here that will be very helpful to you, and I encourage you to look at these links and take some time to process this information. I know we're throwing a lot at you, but if you go to gis.massdot.state.ma.us/mapit, There's a lot of information. And here it talks about the 3 major steps: project need, project initiation, and the project review committee. The best part about this is it has evolved, it's continually changing. And this tool is actually, it's wonderful because there's all kinds of geoprocessing layers. So after you get through the first step, which is the project need, and I'll be talking more and more about this, but it goes into stage 2, which is geoprocessing, and there's multiple layers in there where it filters the information. It looks at environmental justice populations. If it's in those communities, it looks at all kinds of environmental layers for processing and possible permits, and it triggers that. We collect traffic volume information and, the actual cross section that's existing and proposed for the roadway. And it talks about the constraints and concerns, whether it's right-of-way, utilities, environmental. So it's a really helpful tool for us. And we would help you through that process if you need it. If you want to go to the next slide, Daryl, that'd be fine. Thank you. So the key elements that we're looking at, as you can see here, have to do with existing conditions. And that can be anything from the traffic volumes, like I said, the existing cross-section, the proposed cross-section, right-of-way concerns, the local context where the area is identified and your concerns and the needs, and we look at crash data and analysis, safety issues, and that can be bicycle, pedestrian, vehicle. We look at the transit and the bus routes. We look at everything on that. There's also the compatibility with regional and statewide policies where your Friendly for Cause people are here to help you, and they can hopefully, direct you to regional transportation plans or long-range transportation plans or unified planning work programs or, other programs that they might have to help you collect that data that you need to help, understand what to put in to map it. The other thing is the scope of potential for improvement projects. There's so many different things. Here, there's the healthy transportation policy. We do intersection control evaluation. That's a little bit further down the line after the project is accepted. There's road safety audits, or you can clarify the project scope and the proposed cross-section. We look at all the risk factors, and that can be anything from conflicts with, rail or stream crossings or environmental permitting or right-of-way concerns, utilities, construction concerns. So there's also a section to fill out for funding availability, which I believe Daryl alluded to before, when you need to include an estimate. If you want to go to the next slide, that's fine. Thank you. So the project request submission to MassDOT is filled out by the project proponent, and many times municipalities hire consultants to do this, but we also have municipalities that do it on their own. So the first step of the project initiation form, you need to complete this, and you can look at the website on there to get a GeoDot account. Some consultants use their town's account, or sometimes consultants just have their own, their own access to map it. So I've seen it done both ways. And then the next step is the district staff and program managers. We communicate, we have a meeting, and sometimes there's a site visit. Lately, it's been a virtual site visit. We'll set up a meeting, and we have all the stakeholders there. We invite FERCog, we invite the municipality, we invite a small contingency from the District 2 office, just to represent design, utilities, the planning, and environmental components. So we have the consultant do a short presentation of why the project is being initiated, what are the concerns, what are they proposing to do for it. And then we review that and we'll discuss it in-house, and hopefully we get approval to the next stage. And if there's any issues, we'll explain why. And then you can go back in and fill out the next stage, and you submit it. We look at that and we can push it up into MappIt. So one thing I just want to mention is when it's finally done and we give it all the approval, we've checked off all the construction risks and all the other problem areas that we're concerned about, and we identify possible funding sources. It automatically generates a scoring spreadsheet in MappIt, which is what we look at, and that's what we bring to the PRC to discuss. So here we're going to talk about the project proposal, scoping the right project. So some of the concerns that we look at are the scope of the actual limits of the project, the paving, the pavement condition, what is it like, and what are the proposed improvements. The multimodal considerations, there's a lot of concerns about providing for bicycles, pedestrians, transit. It all needs to be ADA compliant. So what is the cross section that's going to be proposed? We're interested in the interface with the abutting properties, how much right of way is going to be considered, drainage requirements, are there culverts, are there bridges, are there narrow pinch points that are going to be influencing what you can do for bicycle or pedestrian improvements. Other structural components can be the retaining walls, or perhaps, you know, the culverts have been inspected and they just need an extension. So there's different types of components that we try to get ahead of and understand some of these concerns. Traffic signals, there's also utility pole relocations. That's a big concern because obviously that adds funding to the project. So these proposed improvements should be tied back to the defined problem, need, and opportunity. And we look to see how the project demonstrates the need to, meet the identified goals and objectives. Go ahead and next slide, please. So the overview of the MassDOT PRC process is once the project initiation form and score sheet is generated, it's been approved, and MappIt is generated. The non-state of good repair general maintenance project is submitted to each district. Once that's all set, the score sheets are reviewed at a pre-PRC meeting, which is typically 2 weeks before the PRC meeting. This project information form and score sheet are discussed at the pre-PRC meeting and approved to be presented to the project review committee. Our next meeting will be May 24th, and we're trying to go with PRC meetings approximately 3 times a year. We're skipping the first quarter because we're very busy with all of the readiness days and the TIP projects. So what we're asking is for municipalities to finish all of their MappIt information about a month ahead of time. So if you're interested in getting a project started, please work with FERCog, and you can reach out to us also. We'll be happy to talk to you about that. I'll just go over very quickly some common reasons that we ask for some scoring revisions, where we might need to reject the project need initially because we need some more information either on the limits of the project. We look for connectivity to bicycle pedestrian facilities, and perhaps a logical termini with an intersection. We look at the scope and the cost estimates. We might need an updated cost estimate to be given. We also want to make sure that design submission is clarified, and that, perhaps quantities need to be increased, or we need to, add some funding because there'll be utility, relocations. There's sometimes a change in the policy or scoring methods. We used to require the intersection control evaluation forms, but we are not doing that now until after the project is approved. So sometimes we ask for more information, and it's always helpful to get the letters of support. I would rather wait and get a letter of support from the elected official, or even, you know, FERCog or the planning agencies. We upload any information into MapIt. If there's recent traffic counts, we ask for those. If there's any information at all, any kind of letters of support are very helpful. And if you want to go to the next slide, please. So project approval, I believe, is this am I turning this over to you now, Daryl?
Sure, that's fine. I can take it from here.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks.
Sure. All right, so I'm back. So the project removal or denial, they're a result of a determination that the project is either not progressing or that funding outside the transportation improvement program were more appropriate. A grant program might be a better avenue. The project approval will result in advancement to the design, programming review by the planning organization, and finally, a MassDOT project manager assignment and estimate add date would be determined. Here's a brief recap, including the 2 MapIt submissions and reviews, the project creation, the project review committee reviews, and finally the assignments to move forward to a design scoping meeting during what is called the pre-25% stage. Note, the projects need to be submitted a month before the PRC meeting. So in this instance, this year by April 24th would be the case, since May 24th is the PRC meeting. The more information, again, that is provided, the smoother the process will go. Once the project review committee approves the project, a letter is sent to the municipality defining responsibilities in terms of the 2-party agreement between MassDOT and the municipality. Included in the PRC approval letter are the programming requirements, noting the following. Once the project has been accepted, it must be listed in the State Transportation Improvement Program, or the STIP, which is financially constrained, making it imperative for the municipalities to track and maintain project costs to the maximum extent practicable. A link providing further details is provided here. The detailed project estimates and design schedules are required at various stages of design, but at a minimum by the 2nd week of January each year. Note, the project costs must include the itemized office estimate, contingencies, construction engineering, utilities, traffic police, and inflation. The reason we require this every January is for TIP readiness days and helps programming for the future years. Also included in the PRC approval letter are the project development requirements, identifying 18 to 20 requirements, including 3 critical milestones, which are required to be submitted by the municipality. The 3 critical milestones include, first, submission to and acceptance of by MassDOT the municipality's design consultant scope and work hour documents. A link has been provided here. We want to make sure that the most recent forms are also being used. Second, confirmation of a signed contract with the design consulting up to which shall include the design public hearing and responses to comments from the DPH. Third, design funding sources must be identified and confirmed via town vote document or grant approval confirmation. Project development requirements notes that consultants and surveyors must also be MassDOT pre-qualified, which the link to such firms is provided here. Again, the scope and fee shall be submitted to MassDOT District Office for review. The municipality and or their designer is responsible for submission of the required environmental permit applications and right-of-way acquisitions. Note, a right-of-way agent will be assigned to the project to provide guidance and review during design. The municipality, as the applicant, shall consider and identify utility work, intersection work, assure monthly design schedules are provided, and be upfront and forthcoming with any potential issues. Also included in the project development requirements are any updated policy or engineering directives as well as the standards. Note that included with the project review committee approval letter is a municipal acknowledgement of their responsibilities to be signed by the highest ranking elected official and returned to the district office. So between PRC approval and 25% submission, first, a MassDOT project manager is assigned and a scoping meeting is scheduled. Second, the municipality issues a notice to proceed for design to begin. Third, a scoping meeting is held. Fourth, the designer develops concepts. And fifth, the project manager, MassDOT project manager, will schedule an over-the-shoulder or cursory review to confirm the scope and cross-section. Moving on, sixth, the proponent or municipality schedules public outreach. Seventh, the project manager evaluates public feedback and reviews the current and PRC approved scope, project review committee scope. And finally, the scope and cost are reassessed, amended, and or confirmed and authorized to proceed to complete and submit the 25% design. This document is a useful guide that we will forward to all the emails of those participating in today's seminar session. It is a working and evolving document. So if you see any corrections, recommendations, or additions, please feel free to contact us. This has a lot of useful information, our contact information, a lot of good tools and links. So again, if you have any suggestions, please feel free to let us know. And with that, are there any questions or comments? Hearing and seeing none, I will turn it back over to the region.
Hi. Lori, should we do our next poll question before we?
Sure. Yeah. I wanted to. Well, first, thank you, Daryl, Ben, and Laura, for the great presentation. Actually, before we do the next question, I had a follow-up question to the first question about MAP. It was just during this discussion period or anytime throughout the meeting, if you have any feedback about the folks who have used MAP-IT in the past, if you have any feedback you want to share about how that was, feel free to raise your hand and share it out loud, or just post any thoughts you have about MAP-IT or project intake in the chat. I think it would be useful information for us to know how your experience with the products were. And I guess, let's pop up the next question too, and maybe we can have some discussion about that.
And the other thing is, Lori, I agree with Lori, that'd be great if anyone has any feedback on MAP-IT, but if you just generally have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to either type them into the chat or use the raise hand button, and then we'll know, and we'll call on you and you can chime in and ask your question out loud. Also, we're not that formal, we can do it either way. So let's see, we have another poll that I'm going to launch, and here we go. And the question is, are you considering initiating a TIP project within the next 6 to 12 months? We're just curious, okay, about folks, if it was something that was on their mind, they had a specific project in mind, or what's happening. It's nice to kind of know what's going on in the region. And I'll just wait a little bit and see how this comes out.
Oh, I see Tracy has a question in the chat. What if you don't know if your town will be applying? I think that's a no for now then, but if you have a project that you're not sure about, that's definitely something you can reach out to us here at the FERCOG, or to your MassDOT district to sort of just start the discussion about whether your idea could be a potential TIP project or other grant funded project. That's great.
All right, I'll just give it another. It seems like folks have replied. So I'm going to end the poll and then I'll share the results here. And we had, again, it was 60-40, which is good. So we're sort of split on folks thinking of considering initiating a TIP project. Thank you for taking part in the poll.
Yeah, that's really good to know. So we look forward to hearing about some of these projects that are being considered. And I guess as a follow-up to this as well, if you have any thoughts about, or well, actually no, my follow-up to this question was if you are considering a TIP project, well, actually either way, what obstacles do you see to that initiating a TIP project? So what might be, if you have a project idea that you might consider for the TIP, what sort of obstacles do you foresee to doing that, or what might be hindering you from applying? Yeah, to just sort of try to get a little bit more info about folks' experience with the TIP process would be great. So again, yeah, just if you want to raise your hand, great, or share just some thoughts in the chat, or if you just want to send this to us offline too, that would be, we'd appreciate that as well. Okay, cool.
All right, and so Lori, do you want to go ahead and Lori Scarborough from the Senior Transportation Planning Engineer at the COG is going to present about our how we rank. We go through a ranking process when we get projects, and she's going to talk about our how we do that. So I'm going to just turn it over to Lori.
Great, thanks, Beth. Yeah, no, that's fine. I'm just moving my click too fast. Yeah, so welcome back. I wanted to flesh out a little bit more about how the FCTPO, the Franklin County Transportation Planning Organization, prioritizes projects for our regional transportation improvement program. For those of you who attended part 1 of the workshop, I'm talking about section 1, the regional target project section. This is just an agenda for the workshop here. So we've already had our intro and an excellent presentation from District 2 on the MAP-IT. And so now I'm going to talk about transportation evaluation criteria, or the TEC or TEC. We ended up, I kind of use both actually, TEC or TEC, depending on my mood. So yeah, so a little bit of background first on the TEC. The FCTPO selects regional target projects for the development TIP, which is a 5-year program that we renew each year. And so we're looking at the projects that are in like the first 4 years that should have already been in the previous year's TIP. It's an ongoing sort of rolling thing. But also looking at potential new projects for that 5th new year, or potential or replacement projects potentially for other program projects that aren't going to make their readiness date. So there are multiple factors that the FCTPO considers when they look at the backlog of projects waiting for TIP funding, how to prioritize and select new projects to add to the TIP each year. And so so these are just the some of those factors, and not in a particular order, but I will say that the 2 most important things that we consider are project cost and project readiness. And that's the project cost versus the available target. As I said, we have an annual target of about $7.7 million each year. And it's going to increase a good amount in 2027 and 2028 to over $9 million. And advanced construction is available for large projects. This is something it's not really relating to tech, but I realized I didn't mention this last time, that for projects that have a cost estimate that exceeds our annual target, that does not mean that they can't get funded for the TIP. So if you have a project that exceeds $7.7 million now, or with inflation is likely to exceed $9 million in 5 years or more. There is still a way to get that funded on the tip through using a method Federal Highway allows called advanced construction. And that's any project where the construction is expected to take more than one construction season and the cost of the project exceeds the annual target. That project cost can be distributed over 2 years. And so the funding portion of the funding will be listed in say 2027, and the second portion of the remaining funding for that project is listed in FY 2028. I just wanted to mention that in case anyone was concerned about the size of a project that exceeded our regional target, which, you know, $7.7 million doesn't go as far as it used to. The next really most important thing that we've discussed over and over is project readiness. Is the project going to be ready to be advertised in the federal fiscal year that it's listed in the tip? That is really, really crucial, particularly for as projects move along and they come up to like the next year in the tip. So right now we're in FY 2023. And so those projects are get a lot of scrutiny to make sure that they are meeting all their design milestones and will be ready to advertise. Other factors that the FCTPO considers in programming projects in the tip are regional significance. Is it a large project that's been identified in our regional transportation plan that has moved through a planning and development process and is now ready for the design phase? Is it appropriate to, we have many projects, high priority projects listed in the regional transportation plan that are such a large scale that it sort of has a lot of moving parts, and it takes a while for them to get to readiness for the tip. But those projects do get priority because they've been identified through the in-depth sort of public input process that goes along with creating the regional transportation plan. Following that is regional equity, which I think we discussed 2 weeks ago, as well as making sure that the opportunity for tip funding is sort of shared equally throughout the Franklin County region, understanding that some towns have more road miles, more bridges, more culverts, more transportation infrastructure than other smaller towns. And so there's definitely a balance there, but looking at how many projects a town has or when was the last time this town had a project on the tip is something that we take into consideration. Greenhouse gas emission impacts. This is a federal highway and state requirement that FCTPO is on board with to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. I will say that this is not like a crucial factor in the tip project prioritization for the FCTPO. We do calculate or estimate the greenhouse gas emission impacts of all the tip projects, but GHG, greenhouse gas emissions, are one of the criteria that is included in our transportation evaluation criteria. And so that's really considered more in the TEC scoring that I'm going to get more into now on the next slide and going forward. So just a little bit more background on how the evaluation criteria are constructed, what they consist of. That there are criteria that we use to evaluate each project and to compare projects to each other according to how well they are in line with the 10 federal planning factors and state and regional transportation planning priorities, which are related to the safety and security of the transportation infrastructure, mobility for all users, connectivity within the transportation network, maintaining and supporting economic vitality, climate resilience, and overall system preservation. So there are criteria, questions, and measures that address each of those planning factors. And the projects are rated or scored, what we just call it tech scoring or TEC scoring, by a group that consists of representatives from MassDOT, both the Office of Transportation Planning and each MassDOT district in the Franklin County region, as well as a staff member from the transportation planning staff. All RPAs in the state have their own TEC scoring that can be unique, have a TEC scoring method that can be unique to their region. In Franklin County, we originally adopted the TEC that were developed by MassDOT, I want to say at least 20 years ago. And in the last year, we have begun and initiated and are well through the process of revising the TEC score, the criteria for Franklin County and customizing it to our region. Both the old and the new tech have the same basic setup of broad categories with several criteria, which in each category and each criteria itself has several metrics that are reviewed for each project. And so on the other side of the screen here, you can see this is an example of the old tech scoring sheet that the FCTPO has used in the past. And there's sort of the two blocks: transportation criteria at the top and then other impact criteria at the bottom. And within transportation criteria, there are three major categories, or within the transportation criteria consists of three major criteria, which are condition of the transportation facility, mobility of the users of that facility, and safety. In the revised tech, the safety will include safety and security. Security is sort of resistance to both physical or environmental damage, not so much the safety of the users, but the security of the facility itself. And then the other impact criteria have to do with community effects and support of the community, land use and economic development, which we're transitioning to livability and sustainable development, and environmental effects, or rephrasing that as environment, climate, and resiliency effects. So let's see. So that old scoring sheet you saw had the numbers associated with each of the metrics for each of the criteria, but it was sort of a vaguer sort of range, like, is this an improvement or not an improvement? And they weren't so much measurable. So the revision is going to assign a specific point range to all the potential variables for each metric. Hopefully this will result in more consistency in scoring across time, because the way the old scoring was worded, it was sort of vague and sort of left up to interpretation. And so each year, as people come and go and just time has passed, we realize that depending on the group of people there involved in the scoring, they maybe weren't being consistent in how they considered a particular metric from one project to the other over time. And so what we really want to do is have a resulting tech score that represents the project well and can be compared to other projects under consideration. And so including in that is also normalizing the score. So the old scoring sheet, it had all those metrics, and each one could be evaluated on a score of -3 to +3. And then the average score for each of the criteria and in each of the score for each criteria was average for each category, and it resulted in a maximum total of 18 points, which was straightforward. But you ended up with a result that it was like this project got a 7 out of 18, and this project got a 9 out of 18, and it's just sort of hard to sort of rank those things in your mind. Like just an 18-point range is just not really intuitive. And so one of the real priorities for revising the scores was to come up with a normalized rating system. And what we came up with was just using a percentage. And so in the new sheets, the total available scores is I want to say 76 total points is available, but the resulting score will be presented as a percentage. And so the project will score 36 out of the 72 points, that would get a 50, or the tech score would be 50%. And so that's going to be helpful moving forward, just so we all are looking at like a reasonable range, a normal range of numbers that people are used to seeing, and not like 9 out of 18 is half, but you get what I'm saying. And also splitting up the criteria into separate criteria, splitting up the scoring into separating criteria for roadway projects versus non-roadway projects, because we encounter more bicycle and pedestrian focused projects, The TPO has been asked to consider more bridge projects and especially culvert projects in recent years, and the way that the old scoring sheets were set up, they were heavily weighted to roadway projects that involve pavement preservation or pavement repair. And so a project that doesn't involve a lot of roadway pavement was not getting scored, even though it was would have, you know, was not scoring as high as would be representative to how that project is actually meeting the goals and priorities of Franklin County and Massachusetts overall. And so now we will have a separate sheet for non-roadway projects. And it's an ongoing process. As I said, we're in the middle of the process right now. We have scored the current some projects on the backlog, some current TIP projects, just looking at comparing just sort of testing the new criteria and comparing the results to the results of the past. And one thing I could say is that the results, while the numbers are a lot different, projects are still sort of in the same ranked order, which makes sense. And so the highest scoring projects are still with the old tech are still the highest scoring projects with the new tech so far, which is validating actually. So I'm going to kind of quickly go through the new scoring sheets. As you saw, like the previous tech, we could fit that all into one 8 by 11, 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, which was a good thing. The new scoring does take up, you know, it has a lot more detail in it, and so it sort of looks more complicated. It's really the same sort of process. It just has more descriptions for the metrics and for the point scales associated with each metric. And so I'm just going to look at these so you can get a sense of what the criteria are. And under condition, we look at, this is just the roadway sheet. I'm not going to spend the time looking at the non-roadway sheet, but I'd be happy to share that with anybody who's interested, particularly if you're considering a non-roadway project, just so you could get a sense of what elements are considered when we are ranking these projects. So as far as condition for a roadway project, pavement condition is the first metric, and now we have a point scale that looks at the type of proposed pavement improvement within the project. Is it preventative maintenance? Is it routine maintenance? Is it rehabilitation? Is it full depth reconstruction? And assigning points that way. We look at other infrastructure improvement that's also included in that project. So the primary goal of this project is, say, pavement reconstruction, but there will also be repairs to existing drainage. There may be additional infrastructure like new sidewalk, and things like that. And so there would be points associated with that. And then finally, under condition is asset management. And this is to encourage project proponents to consider their asset, all their transportation assets in a holistic way with a pavement management system or other asset management system, and to sort of to incentivize that. Looking at mobility, the mobility category, there are multiple criteria here for roadway projects. So these, many of these, as I said, were still inspired by this statewide tech scoring sheets, and just sort of modified the metrics for those. And so the effects on condition and travel time, and ranking sort of is it a minor improvement in travel time? Is it a moderate improvement in travel time? Or is there a real significant improvement on how much time it takes to get through an intersection, say? Is it improved connectivity and access between locations and also between transportation modes? Does it make it easier to go from driving in a car to walking on a sidewalk? Does it make it an improved connection to transit? Those kind of things. And if there are multiple access improvements, then the project would score higher. Effect on other modes of on the mobility of other modes. They said a road that, or a project that was primarily a road-based project, but it did improve mobility for bicycles and or pedestrians would be eligible for some tech points there. Is the project consistent with state and regional freight plans? Does it, you know, support mobility of freight traffic in our region? There's a metric for that. And what is the overall effect on regional and local traffic? Is the project on like a high priority national highway system road, a state numbered route, or a major regional connector? Second page, there's four pages now as opposed to the one page that used to be there. But so the final transportation criteria is safety and security. And so we're looking at the effect on the crash rate. Is this an improvement at a high crash location? Is it an improvement at a location that maybe hasn't been identified as a high crash location, but the project is expected to reduce the crash rate or the number of crashes? There are points associated with that. Does the project address with the effect on safety concerns? Does it address identified safety concerns either through a road safety audit, or does it include proven safety countermeasures within any type of project, even if the primary goal of that project is not a safety improvement? Effect on non-motorized user safety, does it improve safety for bicyclists and pedestrians primarily? And effect on security, is it improving and making more secure an evacuation route? And that takes me over to the other evaluation criteria, the other impact criteria, which starts off with community effects and support. Is the project consistent with our regional transportation plan? Is it supported by the public, by the local government, by the state legislature, or by the region? The more sort of documented support there is for the project, actually documented regional support and documented local support will result in points for the project. Is the project improving mobility in Title VI and environmental justice neighborhoods, the effect on minority and low-income neighborhoods? Does the project have an effect on the development and or redevelopment of housing stock? Moving that, the next category criteria is livability and sustainable development. Does it improve residential quality of life? Does it improve local business, or does it have an improvement effect on local business? Does it have age-friendly or sustainable development effects that would support aging in place and or sustainable green infrastructure development? Is the project consistent with regional land use and economic development plans? If the project addresses a need that's already been identified in a regional economic development plan, that would result in points. Is there effect on job creation or improved access to jobs? And what is the effect, considering the effect on historical and cultural resources? Does this have a positive or negative effect on an existing historical cultural resource? Does it improve mobility within a historic district? That kind of thing. The final sheet has the final criteria, which is or final category, which is environment, climate, and resiliency. And the criteria within this category are the air quality effects, and here where the metric is the greenhouse gas analysis results. And so said that the GHG impact of projects is taken into consideration in our TEC scoring. Other climate effects, improvements to climate vulnerability can include culvert widening, stormwater system upgrades, or best management practices, or other improvements to climate vulnerability included in the project. Is the project consistent with local or regional vulnerability plans? I think most of our member communities now have municipal vulnerability plans. So if a project identifies an improvement in an identified flooding or area, for example, that has points associated with it. What are the water quality effects on water quality and water supply and wetlands? Positive, negative, or neutral, and effect on wildlife habitat. A lot of these things are hit upon when you enter a project into MapIt. Our MassGIS system has layers with information about the locations of wetlands and the habitats of rare wildlife or priority rare species. And so a lot of these things are going to be answered, will be answered when project is input into MapIt, and the resulting reports, they go to the project review committee, which does a similar scoring, but each region uses its own criteria for different consideration for their regional target projects. But we can look at the, so all these metrics, you know, are intended to be something that can be quantified. And so we'll look at the reports that come from MAP-IT to see what those impacts are, particularly on climate, environment, and resiliency. So in closing on the transportation evaluation criteria, I just want to say, I know this might seem like a lot, but I just want to make sure everyone understands that this is not a checklist of project requirements, and it's not anything we use to determine, we or MassDOT use to determine a project eligibility. It's just a tool that we use to compare projects. And as I said, it's not even the primary factor in considering programming a project, but it is when we are comparing two projects of similar size and similar cost and similar readiness for the TIP, then we look at the TEC score, because it gives us a really good window into how well a project hits on all of our regional goals and priorities. So that is all I have on TEC. And so just in conclusion, for the workshop as a whole, I just wanted to share and emphasize, I hope everybody already knows that the FERCOG has a lot of resources within our transportation planning program to support municipal project development with data collection and other planning needs, whether it's a potential TIP project or another type of project that might be eligible for another kind of state or federal grant. So as you know, those resources include our traffic counting program, pavement assessments, culvert assessments, GIS and mapping services, road safety audits for safety analysis of intersections and roadway segments, and our unified planning work program has opportunity for planning studies for particular project or particular transportation needs, or sometimes specific projects. Get a little bit of, we can do a little bit of preliminary project planning and development with the UPWP. And it's not on the slide here, but we discussed it in our last meeting, and I'm sure you've had outreach as well, but and we've talked about it a lot. Our regional transportation plan, we're currently in the process of updating that as we do every 4 years, and is particularly a good time if you have what you might consider like a large transportation need, or something that you know, maybe involves a MassDOT right away. Or it might be something that maybe with like beyond what you consider are the bounds of your resources as a small town in Franklin County. Don't keep it to yourself. I know we are aware of hopefully we're on top of a lot of the transportation needs in Franklin County, but we are very open to hearing your concerns, and a project that may be very significant to a small town is also significant to the region as a whole, and should be considered when we are developing sort of our priority lists for the regional transportation plan, because that is very influential in moving projects forward on the TIP and on the STIP. So that is the conclusion of this part of the workshop, and now I want to get back into the discussion if possible. See if we have any, if anyone has anything to share about TIP projects that you may be considering, or if you have any questions for MassDOT. We had that presentation from the folks from District 2, but I know folks from MassDOT District 1 are also on the line, and we would be happy to sort of facilitate a discussion and maybe some knowledge sharing. That way, so I'm going to stop my sharing, and I think maybe we have another question came up in the chat. Will we get copies of the power? Yes, Tracy. We're going to send the PDFs of both presentations to all the registered attendees, as well as that resource document that Daryl mentioned, and the video recording of the Zoom will be posted on the FERCOG website after the meeting. Yeah. Thanks. Hey, Peter. Peter Frieri from District 1 has his hand raised. Do you want? Oh, you're not even muted. What do you got, Peter?
Can you guys hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Great. No, I just wanted to First of all, thank you guys for a great presentation. I think, as you've already said, there is a lot to take in an hour. But just to kind of reiterate, what you've said, and I think what District 2 said as well, that sometimes, the TIP program is not the right program for the need that a municipality identifies, but sometimes it is. And if it is, even though it looks really overwhelming, I mean, I know District 2 is, and as are we, and as is the COG, we kind of stand ready to help kind of sort out. There's a lot of things sometimes to sort out when a municipality is deciding which is the best way to go, if once they've identified a need. So it can be kind of a confusing process, but I think you've done a great job sort of outlining what communities have to think about, but also the resources that are available to them to kind of help with that decision-making process. So just wanted to put in my 2 cents there.
Thank you, Peter.
Thanks. Yeah. And just one thing I wanted to, I don't think we touched on much, because the intent of this workshop was to focus on municipal projects that could potentially be TIP projects. But whoever is the owner of a transportation facility is eligible to be the proponent of a potential project. And so that means that a lot of our numbered routes and some other roads of the other major roads in Franklin County are under MassDOT's jurisdiction. And so MassDOT is an eligible proponent for TIP projects. And so projects on MassDOT roadways are in consideration and kind of in competition with municipal projects when we are looking at the available projects to program in our regional target on the TIP. So and as everybody knows, MassDOT has resources, has resources to do project development, and they have a lot of experience doing project development. So they kind of have they have a little bit of a knowledge and experience advantage when it comes to developing a project and sort of moving it through the MassDOT process. And so one of our goals for this workshop was to sort of demystify the project development process and to hopefully help you realize that it is accessible to municipalities, and you can successfully initiate a project and get it through the development process. And the FCTPO has strongly committed to prioritizing regionally significant and municipally significant projects, and they are always willing to consider municipal TIP projects as we get plenty of projects initiated by MassDOT. And so we're always sort of ready to help towns get projects initiated and get in the queue to be considered for a regional target. I hope that makes sense. Cool. Betsy, do we have any other questions?
One thing I was just going to share, as was mentioned a few times, we are in the process of updating our regional transportation plan right now, which is kind of one of the big documents that we look to when we are evaluating projects and kind of thinking of projects that fit into various funding sources, or if we hear about funding sources and have heard about a project through the regional transportation planning process. So I am going to just in the chat share some links to public outreach that we have available. We are having a meeting, our big public outreach meeting tomorrow night. It is virtual online. You do have to pre-register. I'm going to put the link in the chat. The meeting is tomorrow from 5:30 to 7 online. We're also having a meeting on Thursday morning at 10 o'clock, which is geared to more for municipal officials, and all the town administrators were emailed about that meeting. If anyone is interested in that meeting, I think that link is as I said, we emailed that out. So if anyone has questions about that, you can email me or Lori about it. I will follow up by putting my email in the chat also. Here's the information. Or if you just want, we have an interactive map that we have posted right now on our website. And I put the link in the chat where you can just go online and actually add a pin for any project ideas or problem areas. And we're going to be going through that input and using that those comments as part of our regional transportation plan, taking information from there about like basically it can be anything from like this route needs a transit route, this needs a sidewalk, this intersection has a problem, whatever. So that's another option. So I just want to mention that because we're doing our big public outreach push right now at the moment. And then in the next month or a couple of weeks, we're going to start just pulling the draft document together. We're on a little bit of a compressed schedule with that. But so I don't know if anyone has any questions for Lori or any of the MassDOT folks.
No.
Right.
As Daryl said, so there are a lot of resources with contact info in the first presentation with contact info for both our MassDOT districts and for Beth and myself here at the COG, and the document that we'll be distributing, that transportation guide, will have links to a lot of MassDOT's resources as well, which I think a lot of those were included, or several of those were included in the slides from the part 1 of the workshop 2 weeks ago. So if there's anyone on the call who was not at the first workshop where we got really in depth about the TIP process, feel free to take a look at the video from last time, or if you check your email, maybe things got buried, reach out and let me know. We can resend you the slides from that as well. I'm pretty sure it's all up on our website now. All right. Okay. Thanks everyone for attending, and definitely reach out if you have any questions or if you have any ideas for future workshop.
I know this was our first sort of, experience with pulling together a workshop on a transportation topic, and it's been fun. So
Yeah.
Any ideas, just shoot us an email.
Yeah, great. Okay.
And thanks to our MassDOT partners for helping us out with this and pulling it together. This information is great. You guys did a great job with your presentation. It's a lot of information, and
Yes.
you put it together in a really great way. That was understandable and concise, and we appreciate it.
You're
try.
very welcome. Pete, I was just wondering, we put our emails in the chat box, Pete. I don't know if you want to put yours in too.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. And my only other
Yeah.
question is if you want to invite people to your next FERCog TPO meeting. That's going to
Oh,
be,
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
yeah. What date is that?
The
I
date
know it's
is
the 4th Tuesday, but I don't know what the date is.
February 28th,
It's the
At,
28th.
noon,
Noontime.
online. If you're interested in that, send me an email because that link goes out. It's I guess it's posted also on our website.
It's posted on our website.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's on the calendar and on our meeting calendar. It's posted.
Yep. Good reminder. Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.